Howdy, Immortallium here, and today I'm going to be doing another discussion video. Interestingly, not about piracy. I know I've been covering so much videos recently on the topic of piracy, scanlations, etc, etc. The reason is it's a very emotional topic for me, something that I feel really attached to, but you know, we can't do videos on it forever, so I think before I go back to that, I'd best just take a break, let the situations kind of work themselves out a bit, and then we can see if I need to update anything. Anyway, point is, today's video, as you can tell from the title below, deals with shoujo. Basically, the reason that I wanted to do this video is because there's kind of, in my kind of otaku world, there's kind of two type of people that I deal with. And one of them is kind of the people I deal with online, who, you know, I'm great friends with, etc, etc. Main interests tend to be seinen, shonen, and recently there's been an increase in the interest of josei, which I'm actually very happy with. But anyway, yeah, so shonen, seinen, bit of josei, not really much on the shoujo side. Whereas the people I deal with, you know, at college, for instance, that are into manga, they really love their shoujo. Like, shoujo is definitely the biggest thing there. Possibly because a lot of them are girls, but even the guys there are like actually very into shoujo, which is interesting. So I thought, you know, I should probably do a video on it, just to explain, you know, what I like about shoujo, what I don't like about shoujo, etc, etc. So let's just start off with the very first thing, and that is, what is shoujo, you know, for someone who doesn't know what shoujo is. Basically, it is an age demographic. I think the word literally means girl in Japanese. And basically it's the female equivalent of shonen. So basically 12 to 18 girls. Old. 12 to 18 years old girls. That's the best way to put it. And basically, it, in comparison to shonen, it prioritizes relationships between characters, particularly the romantic one. That's definitely the topic that is covered way more than anything else in shoujo, you know, romance. So yeah, that's how that is. And let me just explain how I first got into shoujo. So when I first started out collecting manga, I remember the very first 2 volumes I bought were both shonen, Naruto and Soul Eater. Because I was into the anime a lot, their anime in particular, I thought the best way to start out would be, you know, of course, collecting some of the manga of the anime that I had watched. Now, I remember I got some other volumes around the same time. I think I got One Piece around that time as well, and I could have swore I got some other stuff. But anyway, first shoujo I remember. I walked into a bookstore and I saw a volume, and I was kind of thinking to myself, oh, I've heard of that series. It looks quite interesting. And I open it up and it looks really beautiful. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Vampire Knight. Now, Vampire Knight, let's just say, at the time, I was used to only really the shonen art style, and that was, you know, I'm not sure if you noticed this, in talking scenes in particular, it's just really square or rectangular panels, not really much else other than that. And only really in the action scenes do we get, like, you know, diagonal panels, you know, the dynamic paneling, etc, etc. And not only that, the artwork in shonen is simpler. Basically, it's very much about, you know, like using negative spacing, using shading, etc, etc. Not too much detail in general. But I opened up this, and the very first thing I see is this page right here. And just look at the paneling in that page. It just looks absolutely gorgeous. Not only that, the artwork, I mean, I just absolutely love the way that the actual hair is done in that series, in this series in particular. The eyes are detailed. There's got some great character proportions, etc, etc. It's a great looking series. Let me just put it that way. Now, if you want to know my opinion on Vampire Knight is a bit of an odd series for me in that no matter how many times I read it, I always seem to forget the story. Not that the story's bad. From what I remember reading this, like, I actually do enjoy the story. But I'd say, having gone up to volume 6, I kept rereading volume 1, so I must have read this volume maybe 3 or 4 times. I cannot tell you what the story of Vampire Knight's about. I cannot. And I don't know why, because as I said, it's not a bad story. It's not a brilliant story, but it's not a bad one either. So it's the only manga really that happens to me. For some reason, the story just doesn't stay in my head. So I don't get that. But the artwork is definitely beautiful, and I would consider Matsuri Hino to definitely be one of my favorite shoujo artists. Possibly one of my favorite manga artists in terms of artwork. But yeah, that storytelling, I don't know. Like, as I said, it's not bad. It's just, for some reason, it just doesn't stick in my head. I don't get that. Anyway. But my interest in shoujo manga didn't really start until I came across another series, and that was Devil and Her Love Song. Now, I came across this series, very first time I did was in a magazine called Neo, where they reviewed a couple of manga titles. I remember they reviewed the first volume of this, and they gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And I was thinking to myself, well, I like Neo, and I like their opinions, I should probably give this a try. And so I picked up the first volume, and I absolutely loved it. Now, I will say it's not the easiest read, in that basically the plot of this, we have her, Maria. She is a transfer student to a school, and she's kind of aggressive, but not like physically aggressive, just more kind of passive aggressive. She is very good at pointing out flaws in people and making them feel really, really uncomfortable. And so she makes a lot of enemies in school almost immediately, and they start bullying her. That's the best way to put it. And that is the easiest thing to read, but the characters, the story, it's really, really good. I'd absolutely love the way the characters were developed. I love the the artwork in it. I will say isn't as good as Matsuri Hino's artwork in Vampire Knight. It's a bit plainer and not much shading, but there's still like that really nice dynamic paneling that I associate with shoujo, as well as another thing I associate with shoujo very heavily is very detailed hair. So yeah, and overall I will say that this is definitely a series worth checking out. I will say that I thought that the quality of the series dipped a bit, you know, as time went on. So I actually prefer the first several volumes of Devil and Love Song to the other volumes. But still a series well worth checking out overall. That's the way I'll put it. Now, so that's kind of how I really started getting into shoujo. Now, since then, I've noticed that there is a bit of an issue happening in Japan right now, and that is that shonen has become a lot more profitable than shoujo titles. And there's probably, okay, I'm not an expert in that subject, you know, I can't say, oh, I have this piece of research, I have this piece of research, but from what I can tell, there's a reason I think that shonen very much outsells shoujo, and that is guys just aren't comfortable reading manga that's aimed at girls. Okay, so for my two references, one is a real life experience and another is from a book. There's a novel, light novel series that I absolutely loved. You know, great. I did a review of it on this channel. It's called My Girlfriend's Geek, and in it, the lead character is a guy who is dating a fujoshi, which is a girl who's mad into yaoi, but she's also like a mad otaku, so she's really into manga and anime and all that stuff. And one of the things she's into is shoujo. Now, the interesting thing is she leaves all her shoujo at his place. And, you know, he's completely embarrassed by that. He's like, you know, what if my friends come over and see that I have all this shoujo over here? And you know what her response is? Her response is, you know, I'm a 30-year-old woman. I can't have shoujo be seen at my place either. So I just think that's quite an interesting kind of idea, that not only are guys uncomfortable with having shoujo, you know, at their house, you know, particularly if they're living by themselves, but so are like older women. They're afraid to you know, be able to say, okay, I read shoujo. So really, it's much more limited in that regard. Now, I don't know if that same thing applies to shonen. I do know older businessmen do read shonen on the trains, just simply because, you know, it doesn't take as much brain power to read as seinen. And then seinen is something that they read when, you know, it's less busy and all that. I do know that that means that there is a significant amount of the population of Japan, whether they be older female, young boys, or like male basically, that won't read shoujo. And I think that's a shame, because, you know, for example, it's the same thing over here. There are romance films that guys are just like, I don't want to watch that. And the reason for that isn't necessarily because they won't like it, it's because of the fact that it'll make them somehow less than a man. So I think, yeah, that's pretty interesting, I think. The other thing, actually, and it's the same kind of idea, is that I have a friend of mine, I won't say who, but he came over one day and we were talking about manga and all that, and he was, you know, when he was young, he watched a show called Card Captors, which, you know, he absolutely loved. Now, of course, it's the butchered English version, but we were young, so of course we liked it at the time anyway. And he was like, oh, you know, I told him that, oh, I have the uncensored manga, and he was like, oh yeah, you know, I'd really be interested in checking that out. So I showed him the volume, and this volume, to be more specific, and you know the very first thing he said, I wouldn't be comfortable having that on my shelf. Why? The reason is simple, it's pink. So, yeah, so immediately, the simple idea that it was pink put him off. Which I think is a shame. I mean, you know, I don't really care if it's pink. I mean, I literally have a manga called Pink. Although actually the spine isn't pink except for the actual logo. But anyway, my point is, I don't really care if something's pink or not. Like, I mean, what does that have to do with the quality of the storytelling, or, you know, whether or not I'll like the actual content? Yeah, so I do find that a bit annoying, and I think it's something that people need to get over. Like, it's fine if you're not interested in checking out shoujo simply because you don't like the way stories are being told in it, or you don't like the art style, etc, etc. But simply because it's for girls, I don't really think that's a proper excuse. Or that, or it looks, you know, girly on your shelf. I just think that's a bit, you know, annoying. That's the best way to put it for me, you know, it's a shame. That's the best way to put it. Because, you know, as I said before, girls would check out shonen in Japan. Why can't the reverse be true? And the last thing I kind of want to just touch on is that storytelling. I think I should probably have done the storytelling before the previous rant I went on, but I'll just do that now. And that is the use of melodrama. Now, melodrama is used in pretty much all forms of manga. Basically, in Asian countries, melodrama is enormously popular. You know, Taiwan, South Korea, China, Indonesia, Japan. So, of course, since, you know, melodrama is so all-pervasive, of course it's going to make its way into the manga and anime mediums. And not just specific to shoujo, it's, you know, shonen has melodrama, seinen does, josei does, of course. But when one thinks of melodramatic manga, most people will think of shoujo. And the reason for that is because it's kind of more equivalent to what we associate with melodrama over here, you know. Like, let me give you an example. If someone walks out of a cinema and, you know, a person's like, oh, how was that movie? And the person was, oh, it was melodramatic. In all likelihood, they're not going to be saying, I liked it because it was melodramatic. What they're going to probably be saying is the negative connotation of melodramatic, as in it was over the top and it didn't, like, I just found it a bit uninteresting. So, which I think is a shame, because melodrama, like any other technique, can be used very well. In fact, a lot of classics rely on melodrama, and actually use melodrama exceptionally well. Dracula, for instance, Wuthering Heights, Gone with the Wind. A more recent one is Titanic. I know a lot of people don't like Titanic, but I do, you know, so, you know, shoot me for it. Anyway, point is, melodrama is a technique that can be used very well or misused. So, let me just show you, for example, there is a manga here that I have where I think melodrama is really misused, and that is Blackbird. Now, Blackbird has a very popular fan base, and in fact, actually, it's popular enough that they're actually going to be releasing a box set of this later, Viz Media. So, if you want to get a complete series of Blackbird, yeah, there'll be the box set coming out soon. But the problem with me with this is that the characters don't act in a realistic way to situations. It is exceptionally over the top, and I just don't care. So, yeah, this is a manga where I think melodrama is misused, whereas those other examples I gave, like Devil and Her Love Song, and actually to a lesser extent Vampire Knight, but still far better than Blackbird, melodrama is well used in that. It manages to touch my emotions, to make me feel for the characters, feel for the story, etc, etc. So that's just something I want people to take into account. Not only about the shoujo, but also about all forms of mediums. That melodrama is a technique, and it can be used or misused. That's the best way to put it. Anyway, so finally, I guess that I'm going to end this video off with just some recommendations. So you're kind of like, hey, Immortallium, I'm into manga, and I haven't actually gotten into shoujo manga yet. You know, what should I start with? The two that I'd immediately say that you should start off with would be Devil in a Love Song, of course, and Nana. Now, Nana, I'm only 6 volumes into, but already I really love this series and I really want to get more. The artwork is great, the characters are exceptionally good. I have a feeling that if I read more of this, I'm actually it's probably going to beat out Devil in a Love Song for my favourite shoujo title. So, definitely check out these two. Other ones I would highly recommend you pick up Cardcaptor Sakura. As I said, the artwork is exceptionally beautiful from Clamp, and the storytelling is very strong, you know, very powerful emotions, etc, etc. And also, one of the best final pages in a manga that I've ever seen. It uses the most perfect kind of double boom page that I've ever seen in a manga, so, for the final pages. So, I'll just say, yeah, like, I mean, I knew immediately, as soon as I finished the whole series, I was like, that's probably one of my favourite final pages of manga I've ever read. And then other ones I would highly recommend Sand Chronicles. Basically, this is something I wasn't expecting to love. I got the first 3 volumes of it just to check it out. I heard good things about it, I read it, and I immediately ordered the last 7 volumes. So it's a 10-volume series overall, and this series is actually really, really good. So I would highly recommend people pick up Sand Chronicles. It doesn't get enough attention. And then finally, you know, this is of course a no-brainer. Ouran High School Host Club, very popular in anime format. And Viz have released a complete series box set of it, so you can actually get all of Ouran High School Host Club for cheaper than getting the tankobons individually. I will say, if you're going to compare it to the anime, the artwork doesn't really hold up well for the first several volumes. It's kind of mediocre, but then after a while the artwork starts getting really good. So that's, you know, that's a way to look at that. So, just to summarize up very quickly, basically I think that people should not reject shoujo simply because of the fact that it's aimed at women. I think if you are a man, you should still, you know, check out shoujo. There are some great, great titles out there. And it doesn't matter if it's pink or it's purple or it's girly or whatever. A good story is a good story, enough said. And the artwork and storytelling, you know, again, melodrama, it's a bit like a lot of people in the West associate it negatively now, but, you know, just simply give some really good shoujo titles a go. And in fact, actually think back to some shonen stuff as well in seinen. You've encountered melodrama before. You know, shoujo isn't the first time, so just think about that. So yeah, that's my discussion on my opinions on shoujo, and you know, why I think other people should give it a go if you haven't tried it yet. That's the best way to put it. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.